Nia was finishing her evening shift at the hospital in Arusha when her phone buzzed. A new message popped up in the family WhatsApp group. Dinner at home tonight. Everyone must come. Dad has something important to discuss. Her father, Mr. Juma, wasn't the kind of man who called family dinners. He was quiet, proud, and usually let her mother handle everything at home. That's why the message made Nia pause. She hadn't been back in months. Work kept her busy, but if she was honest, it was more than that. Her mother, Miriam, had never treated her the same as her brothers, Kelvin and Malik. While they were showered with warmth, Nia often got cold stares and clipped words. Still, something inside her said she should go. Maybe this dinner could change things. That evening, Nia stood at the gate of the family house, heart pounding. The smell of pulao drifted from the kitchen, and laughter spilled out from the living room. For a moment, it felt almost normal. Kelvin greeted her with a quick hug. Malik waved from the couch. Her father's face lit up when he saw her, his smile full of pride. But her mother? She barely looked up from the table, pretending to be busy with the plates. Nia sat down, forcing a smile, trying to fit back into this familiar yet distant space. Dinner went smoothly, stories, jokes, and the clinking of glasses. But as her father called for dessert, something in his tone changed. That's when everything began to shift. The dinner had gone better than Nia expected. Everyone was laughing, her father looked happy, and for once the tension in the room didn't feel so heavy. Plates were cleared, and dessert was being served, her mother's famous banana pudding. Nia relaxed a little, thinking maybe this family dinner really was just a nice get-together. Then her father lifted his glass, smiling proudly. "So, Nia," he said, his voice warm and teasing, "did the money work?" The spoon in Nia's hand stopped midair. "What money?" she asked, half laughing, thinking maybe it was a joke. The room went completely silent. Even the ceiling fan seemed to pause. Her mother's fork slipped from her hand and clattered on the plate. Kelvin looked at Malik, then back at Nia. Her father frowned slightly, confused by her reaction. "You know," he said, forcing a small laugh, "the money we sent you for your business." Nia's stomach twisted. "Business?" she repeated, looking from face to face. "I don't have a business." The smile faded from Mr. Juma's face. "Miriam told me she sent you 15 million shillings, he said slowly, "from my retirement saving. I told her it was too much, but she insisted you needed it." For a moment, Nia thought she'd misheard him. 15 million shillings? From his retirement? Her chest tightened. She shook her head. "Dad, I never got that money." Kelvin's eyes widened. Malik leaned forward. "Wait, what?" he said softly. Mr. Juma blinked, as if trying to process what she'd said. "What do you mean you never got it?" "I mean exactly that," Nia said, her voice trembling. "No one sent me anything. I've been struggling to pay rent for months." Her father turned sharply to Miriam. "Miriam," he said, his tone changing, "you told me you transferred it to her account yourself." Miriam's face went pale. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The sound of distant crickets filled the silence that followed. Nia looked straight at her mother. "Mom," she said quietly, "what's going on?" Miriam forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You must have forgotten, Nia. Maybe it went to a different account." Nia's throat went dry. "Forgotten? How could someone forget 15 million shillings? Her father stared at his wife, disbelief written all over his face. The tension around the table grew heavier with each passing second. No one touched their dessert anymore. Kelvin shifted uncomfortably. Malik avoided eye contact. Nia could feel her heart beating hard in her chest. She had come home hoping for peace, but instead she was caught in the middle of something she didn't understand. A secret, a lie, or maybe both. And as she sat there, still frozen in shock, she knew one thing for sure. This dinner was far from over. The air in the room grew heavy, thick with confusion and tension. Everyone sat frozen around the dining table, unsure what to say next. Miriam's hands trembled slightly as she picked up her napkin. Her face had gone pale. "You must have forgotten, Nia," she said, her voice unsteady. "I sent it to your account months ago." Nia stared at her mother, stunned. "Forgotten?" she repeated quietly. "Mom, I've been paying rent late for months. I never saw that money. Not a single shilling." A soft whisper came from the other side of the table. "Wait," Kelvin said slowly, glancing between them. "Are you saying Mom lied?" The words hung in the air like smoke. Mr. Juma's face hardened. His warm, proud expression from earlier was gone. He leaned forward, his voice low and sharp. "Miriam," he said, "show her the transaction." Everyone's eyes turned to her. Miriam hesitated, fumbling for her phone. She unlocked it and started scrolling, her fingers moving aimlessly on the screen. "It must have failed," she muttered after a long pause. "I'll check later." But it was too late. The look on Mr. Juma's face said everything. He already knew. His voice shook as he spoke. "That was my entire pension," he said, staring at her as if seeing her for the first time. "You told me our daughter needed help. You said she wanted to start a business." Miriam looked up, her eyes flashing. "I did help," she snapped, her voice rising. It went to the family. Everything I do is for this family. Nia's heart pounded. What does that mean, Mom? She asked quietly. Where did the money actually go? Kelvin looked at Malik, his expression changing. To the family? He repeated, his voice shaking. Or to Malik's failed car dealership? The room erupted with noise, chairs scraping, voices overlapping. Malik's head shot up, anger flashing in his eyes. Don't start, Kelvin, he muttered, his voice defensive. But Mr. Juma didn't move. He just sat there, staring at his wife, his hands clenched into fists on the table. Tell me the truth, Miriam, he said in a low, broken tone. What did you do with my money? Miriam's eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing. The silence stretched painfully long. For Nia, the moment felt unreal. She had grown up thinking her mother's coldness was just emotional distance. But now, watching her avoid the truth, Nia felt something deeper, betrayal. The laughter from earlier felt like a memory from another world. The food sat untouched, the sweet smell of banana pudding turning bitter in the air. No one knew what would happen next, but one thing was certain. Whatever secret Miriam was hiding was about to come out, and when it did, this family would never be the same again. The silence stretched so long that it started to hurt. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Miriam, waiting for her to say something, anything. Mr. Juma's voice cut through the air, low and angry. Where did the money go, Miriam? Her lips trembled. She looked down, twisting her wedding ring, avoiding everyone's gaze. Then suddenly, as if the pressure was too much, she snapped. Fine, she shouted, her voice cracking. I gave it to Malik. He promised to double it in 6 months. It was supposed to help everyone. The room erupted. Mr. Juma slammed his hand on the table so hard that the glasses rattled. You what? You gambled my savings on another one of his schemes? Malik jumped to his feet, his face red. It wasn't a gamble, Dad. I was close to sealing a deal. I just needed capital to finish it. You never believe in me. Because every time I do, you lose. Juma shouted back. You lost the car dealership, the shop, the land, and now my retirement? Nia sat frozen, her heart pounding in her ears. Everything started making sense now. The confusion, the tension, the lie about her business. Her voice came out in a whisper. So, you let them think I took the money? Miriam turned toward her, tears welling up but her tone still sharp. You don't understand, Nia. You've always been the responsible one. Everyone feels sorry for you. You always get sympathy. I just wanted your brothers to have a chance too. Nia stared at her, stunned. Sympathy? She said softly. Mom, I worked 2 jobs to survive. I wasn't looking for sympathy. I was trying to live. Kelvin stood up, his chair scraping the floor. So all this time, you blamed Nia to protect Malik? He asked, his voice full of disbelief. That's not fair, Mom. Malik snapped back. You're one to talk. You never supported me either. At least Mom believed in me. Believed? Juma said bitterly, his voice shaking. She believed a lie. You took my pension, Malik. Money I spent my whole life earning. Do you even understand what that means? Malik lowered his eyes, but didn't answer. Miriam covered her face with her hands, crying. I thought I was helping. I just wanted the family to do better. But Nia could only stare at her mother, her chest tight. All those years she had felt invisible, unloved, and now she understood why. Her mother's love had always been conditional. The house was filled with the sound of arguing and broken trust. The laughter from earlier was long gone. For the first time, Nia wished she had never come to that dinner, because now nothing about her family felt the same. Mr. Juma's chair scraped back sharply as he stood, his whole body trembling with rage. The air in the room felt like it was about to snap. You let me believe my daughter was selfish, he said, his voice shaking but loud enough for everyone to hear. While you were lying to my face? Miriam's face crumpled, and she sank back into her chair, covering her mouth with her hand. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I did it for the family, she stammered, her voice breaking. I just wanted to help everyone. But Mr. Juma wasn't listening anymore. He turned sharply and walked out of the dining room, leaving everyone in stunned silence. Nia's heart pounded, her stomach tight with a mix of fear and anticipation. A few minutes later, he returned, holding a brown envelope in his hand. His eyes were dark, his jaw set, and his hands clenched the envelope as if it were the last piece of his control. He dropped it onto the table with a thud. The sound made everyone jump. He opened the envelope slowly, letting the papers slide out. It was the deed to the family house, the home they had all grown up in, the place where so many memories were made. Mr. Juma's voice cut through the silence again, firm and cold. I was going to transfer this house to you, Miri, he said, looking straight at his wife. But now, it will go to the one person who hasn't lied to me. The room went completely quiet. Miriam's hands froze over her face. Kelvin and Malik stared at their father, mouths slightly open. The weight of the moment hung heavy. All eyes shifted slowly toward Nia. She sat there, her hands folded in her lap, heart pounding. She hadn't asked for this, hadn't even expected it, but now the truth was clear. her honesty, her hard work, her struggles while everyone else had been hiding the truth. That was what mattered to her father. Mr. Juma's eyes softened slightly as he looked at Nia, though the anger hadn't completely faded. "This house belongs to the one who didn't lie," he repeated, his voice steady now. "You earned this, Nia." For a moment, Nia didn't know what to say. Her throat felt dry, tears threatening to spill, but she only nodded, letting the weight of the moment sink in. Around the table, the family seemed frozen, as if realizing for the first time that lies had consequences, and honesty, even when unnoticed for years, could not be ignored. The father she had always admired, the one who had quietly worked for his family's future, had finally spoken his truth, and with it, he had changed everything. Miriam's voice rose, sharp and panicked. "You can't do that. This is our house." Her hands shook as she gestured toward the papers on the table, her face pale with anger and fear. Mr. Juma's eyes were hard, his voice cold and steady. "I built it," he said, "with my own hands and my own money. You spent my savings without my consent. This house is mine to decide." Kelvin jumped in, trying to defend their mother. "Dad, maybe. You stayed quiet while your brother stole." Juma cut him off, his tone fierce. "Silence is guilt too. You knew what was happening and did nothing. That makes you part of it." The room erupted. Voices overlapped, insults flew, and chairs scraped loudly across the floor. Miriam sobbed openly now, clutching her hands to her chest. Malik shouted, trying to explain himself, but no one was listening. The chaos grew, doors slammed, and the sound of broken trust echoed through the house. Nia felt frozen in the middle of it all. She wanted to say something, to calm everyone down, but the tension was suffocating. Instead, she watched, heart heavy, as the family she had known her whole life seemed to collapse around her. Hours later, after the shouting had faded but the anger still lingered in the air, Nia sat in her car outside the house. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She was shaking, a mix of guilt, anger, and disbelief coursing through her. She had never wanted any of this. And yet, even as her chest ached, part of her felt something else, a quiet, stubborn sense of vindication. After years of feeling invisible, of being treated like an outsider in her own family, the truth had finally come out. She started the car, the engine's hum filling the silence around her. The city streets of Arusha stretched ahead, but for the first time in a long while, Nia felt a flicker of peace. The night was cool against her skin, and she realized that while her family might still be broken, at least the lies had ended. She drove home slowly, letting the tension in her shoulders ease a little. The weight of the day pressed down on her, but beneath it was a quiet strength. The truth was out, and for Nia, that mattered more than anything. A few days later, there was a soft knock on Nia's apartment door. She wasn't expecting anyone, and when she opened it, Miriam was standing there, looking smaller somehow, her shoulders slumped and her eyes red from crying. "Nia," her mother said, her voice almost breaking, "please talk to your father. He's not himself. He wants to put everything in your name." Nia crossed her arms and looked her mother straight in the eye. "You only care now because you're scared," she said, her voice steady but sharp. "Not because you suddenly care about me." Miriam swallowed hard and stepped inside, closing the door behind her. She sank into Nia's tiny couch, hands twisting together in her lap. "I made a mistake," she admitted, tears falling freely now. "I just wanted to help Malik. I didn't think about how it would hurt you." Nia's chest tightened. She sat across from her mother, her arms still crossed. "You never helped me," she said quietly. "You just hid things from me. You made me believe I was alone in this world while you gave everything to my brothers. That's not help. That's betrayal." Miriam's lips trembled. She looked at Nia with pleading eyes, like she was begging for something she didn't deserve. Then, in a voice so low Nia almost didn't hear it, her mother whispered something that made her heart skip a beat. "If your father finds out Malik used part of that money to pay his debts, he'll disown him," Miriam said, her voice shaking. Nia leaned back, processing the words. There was still more. Her mother had been keeping secrets, even now. She realized the truth of that dinner. The fight, the lies, the anger, had only been part of the story. There were layers of deception, and her mother wasn't finished revealing them. For a moment, Nia stayed silent, letting the weight of the confession settle between them. Her apartment, small and quiet, suddenly felt suffocating. Miriam's desperation was real, but so was her own exhaustion from years of being treated as the outsider in her own family. "You still have things to tell me," Nia said finally, her voice calm but firm. "I need to know everything if we're going to fix anything." Miriam's hands trembled in her lap. She nodded slowly, knowing the walls she had built around her secrets were beginning to crumble. And Nia understood one thing clearly. The truth was far from over, and the family she thought she knew still had many shadows waiting to come into the light. That evening, Mr. Juma called everyone back to the family house. The air was tense, heavy with unspoken words. Nia sat quietly at the edge of the table, letting her mother and brothers do the talking this time. She didn't interrupt, didn't defend herself. She wanted the truth to come out on its own. Malik fidgeted in his chair, trying to explain himself. "It wasn't my fault, Dad," he said, his voice defensive. "I only used half the money. The rest, I planned to pay back later. I was going to fix everything." Mr. Juma's eyes narrowed. "Half," he said slowly, his tone sharp and cutting. "What happened to the rest?" Nia reached into her bag and pulled out a neat stack of papers. Without a word, she laid them on the table in front of him. The bank statements showed the full transfer from Miriam to Malik's account, followed by the loan repayment that made it clear the money had been used and mismanaged. Everyone went quiet. Malik's face went pale. Kelvin looked between his father and mother, realizing the full weight of what had happened. Miriam shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Mr. Juma picked up the papers, his hands trembling. His voice broke as he spoke. You stole from me. All of you," he said, his gaze sweeping over Malik, Kelvin, and Miriam. The room felt like it had gone cold. Then slowly he turned to Nia. His expression softened, and for the first time in a long while, there was a hint of pride in his eyes. "You," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You were the only one who didn't take anything. You were honest. You worked hard. You didn't hide behind lies." Nia felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had expected anger, maybe disbelief, but instead she saw something she hadn't seen in years, recognition from her father. Kelvin and Malik didn't know what to say. Miriam lowered her eyes, tears forming, finally confronted with the full truth of her actions. The tension that had held the house hostage for weeks seemed to shift, just slightly, now that honesty had been laid bare. For Nia, it was a quiet victory. She didn't gloat, didn't celebrate. She simply let the evidence speak for itself. The lies that had shadowed her for so long were exposed, and at last, the truth had cleared the air. Her father leaned back, holding the papers, his eyes still on her. "You've proven yourself," he said quietly, "and for that, you have my respect and my trust." Nia nodded, letting herself breathe for the first time that night. She had stayed silent, but now she felt powerful in a way that money or anger could never give. The power of honesty, of integrity, and of finally being seen for who she really was. After the storm of anger, lies, and secrets, Mr. Juma finally made his decision. The house, the place that had held so many memories, was legally transferred into Nia's name. It wasn't just about property, it was about trust, honesty, and the years she had endured without recognition. Alongside this, he opened a small trust fund in her honor, dedicated to helping young nurses in Arusha, a way to give back to the community Nia cared for so deeply. At first, Miriam refused to leave the house. She lingered in the rooms she had once claimed as her own, her pride making her stubborn. But over time, she moved in with her sister, accepting that she had lost her control but still needed a place to rebuild herself. Kelvin and Malik disappeared for months, avoiding the scrutiny and judgment that had finally caught up with. For Nia, life began to feel lighter. The house was hers, but more importantly, she felt seen and respected for the first time in her adult life. Yet, she knew the past couldn't simply be erased. She didn't gloat over her victory. Instead, she carried herself with quiet strength, knowing she had earned this honestly. Weeks later, Nia decided to visit her mother. Miriam was sitting in the small living room of her sister's house, looking older, more fragile than Nia remembered. Nia sat down across from her, keeping her tone calm and steady. "I forgive you, Mom," she said softly, "but I'll never forget." Miriam's eyes filled with tears. She reached out, but her hands trembled, unsure how to connect. In a voice almost too quiet to hear, she whispered, "I just wanted to feel useful again." Nia nodded, understanding the pain behind her mother's actions without condoning them. She could see the desperation, the misplaced love, and the fear that had driven Miriam to betray the family's trust. It didn't erase the hurt, but it gave her perspective. That day, Nia left her mother's house without anger, carrying a sense of closure and clarity. She had reclaimed her place in the family, but she also understood the fragility of human mistakes. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant moving forward with honesty, with awareness, and with the strength to protect herself from future betrayals. For Nia, the turning point wasn't just the house or the trust fund. It was the realization that integrity mattered more than sympathy, that truth could finally reshape relationships, and that she didn't have to fight alone anymore. Life was far from perfect, but for the first time, she felt the world had tilted just enough in her favor for things to be fair, at least for now. A year had passed, and Nia found herself setting the table in her own home, preparing for a family dinner. The room smelled of spices and fresh bread, warm light spilling from the ceiling lamp. It was different this time, quieter, calm. Her father looked healthier, his shoulders less tense, his eyes brighter. Even Miriam seemed softer, sitting slightly apart but relaxed. As they ate, Laughter came easily, not forced. When the main course was finished, Mr. Juma raised his glass, a genuine smile lighting up his face. "To honesty," he said, his voice strong and steady, "because one truth can feed a family better than any lie." Glasses clinked quietly around the table. Even Miriam managed a faint smile, her eyes reflecting some of the warmth that had once been hidden. Nia felt a weight lift from her shoulders, a sense of calm she hadn't known in years. Dessert arrived, Nia's homemade chocolate cake, and she looked around the table at her family. For the first time, she didn't feel like an outsider. She saw her father's pride, her brother's tentative respect, and her mother's cautious warmth. Everything that had been broken before was still fragile, but it was healing. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "The money may disappear, but integrity is what makes you truly rich." She realized then that this was more than a house, more than trust funds or money. It was about truth, respect, and the strength of doing the right thing. After dinner, Nia walked her father out under the stars. The night was calm, the air cool, and they laughed softly together, the sound light and easy. In that quiet moment, Nia felt the bond she had longed for all her life, unshakable, honest, and stronger than ever. For the first time, she felt fully at peace.